Hello and welcome to a meeting of the Joes. Dr. Joe Mather, a functional medicine doctor in New Orleans. And this is the one and only Joe Bozzo, who graciously came on to share his story with everyone. Hi, Joe.
Hi. Hey, Dr. Joe. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you, my friend. We are going to talk about your story today. And when you came to see me, I love you, man, but you were kind of a mess. You were hurting. I actually wrote this down. You said you saw multiple doctors, 7 doctors, allergists, at least one infectious disease doctor, a holistic doctor, everything in between. You've been on multiple doctors, multiple drugs, multiple lab results to no effect. I've been treating the gut for 10 months. I've also been on a low histamine diet. So that's the background for when you came in to see me. You have a immune-based condition that causes you to have severe, devastating flares of hives. It's called chronic idiopathic urticaria. And that was the main reason why you came in to see me. Tell us a little bit about how you were feeling before you came in.
Yeah, I mean, it was a mental and a physical state that I don't want to go back to, right? I think physically it was 24/7 chronic hives. And all throughout the night, all throughout the day, it made it hard for me to complete school. I was getting my MBA. It made it hard for me to work. So I think it was just very difficult from a physical state. And that was just top to bottom, right? I think eventually it was actually more in the back and the front and the legs and the arms. And then it got up to my face. And, I'm in sales. So it's very for me to have a hive on my face, right? And I think mentally that really started hurting me. And I'm pretty tough. I've been through a little bit of stuff. I think most of the time I'm able to kind of counter this. But at some point when I was about to see you, I was kind of a little bit hopeless. I saw all these different doctors and medications, not much was working. So I was almost entering the state of depression, I think, at that point. And I think that's when you probably saw me. I was like, hey, sure, I'll give you a shot, but I'm not holding my breath, right? I think that's what happens when
we had a call on the phone and I had to convince you to come in. I'm glad you did. I probably have seen 6 to 12 cases of CIU. And like your case, they're mostly driven by toxic exposures. We'll talk about that in a moment. Depression and even suicidality is the norm because of how horrible this illness can be. So if anything, you might be minimizing it because it's one thing to be in constant pain, constant itching, constantly not in control of where you're going to have a hive or reaction to your body, having reactions to food, then not sleeping because you're up itching is just a particularly horrible state to be in. So we help people understand it doesn't have to be that bad and they can get better. You had the whole workup. You had tried almost everything and you came in, and why don't you tell us maybe the first things that we did?
I think first thing was just to tell you about my story, how long it's been going on, who I've tried. And you mentioned a couple of those doctors, even tried a rheumatologist at one point. So it was a lot of blood tests, a lot of medications. We went through, all right, what are you taking? What have you tried so far? I think you fully recognize, all right, this is a guy who's losing a little bit of confidence in the practice itself. So what I really appreciated more than anything was instead of just loading me up on all these different things, you kind of took some time to talk to me a little bit, Joe to Joe type of thing, right? Like what's going on in your mind, right? Boost some confidence. I think that's the first thing I remembered was, hey, listen, we're going to figure this thing out, right? We've done this before. I've got some use cases. I've seen this happen. I've seen success. And I think from that point, I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. There's nothing to lose at this point. So we went through that. We went through kind of my history and things like that. And obviously after a while, we did a blood test and you kind of started to figure out what was really wrong at the end of the day. It was really a good 60-minute conversation to understand why it was happening, when it was happening, things like that.
It's how medicine should be, right? How I think it used to be when doctors had a good chunk of time to figure things out. And I think the art of being a good doctor is not on how many new lab tests you can order or how many new supplements. It's, can you think? Do you have time to listen? Do you have time to read and research? And that's ultimately why I was confident that I could get you better, was that I was able to take time and see what worked, what didn't work. And so let's pivot. Well, let's stay in a moment for the things that didn't work, because there are a lot of people that I hope can watch this video who have CIU, can learn from your experience. Maybe we can just, I have a list, but if you want to, just the first couple of things that come to mind, let's start there.
Yeah. And I'm part of these groups. I hear the stories. This one, that's also part of what seems to the biggest part of all of this is the hopelessness. I've seen stories of folks that have had it since they were little kids. I talked to this gentleman that is in his 60s and it started 20 years ago, and he's lost his job and he still has the reactions. He's on a prednisone every day for the last 20 years, I think. And so you start reading these stories and you're like, well, I guess there's nothing there. And then you start going to see doctors, and these doctors essentially are just giving you histamines, trying different circles and things, Xolair shots, things like that, that say, all right, this works, but then it doesn't work. So I think you're fighting these two different battles, and it makes it very difficult to trust new doctors, new ideas, new practices, because there's not a lot out there that says this has worked for me. And that doesn't matter what practice you're in. And so I think trying all those different medications and trying those shots, antihistamines, as you mentioned, my primary care sent me to an infectious disease doctor. They had no idea what it was. They thought, oh, maybe it was cancer related. I'm like, okay, well, give it a shot, right? So everything was a dead end. I don't think there's much that I haven't tried, to be quite frank. There's a few I was thinking of doing, but we're kind of risky a little bit. My wife's like, I don't know. I don't think we want to do that. Could hurt your liver, all these other things. And you gave me that moment to be like, hey, don't try those things. We got other things we could try first that are a little bit more healthy for general health.
It's one of the first things is you want to make sure you've exhausted the safe, low-hanging fruit. But there's a point at which you just don't want to keep doing the same things over and over again. So I'm going to share a screen.
Go ahead.
I hope this can just help people just get an idea for what it might look like sometimes. So let me see, let me find the right one. All right, here we go. Okay, so what we have here is part of your chart. And I do this for almost all cases is I put treatment response right below, my major notes. And the point here is that every good doctor is looking at what's already been done, what hasn't been done, and did it help? Did it hurt? Or was there no change? You want to stop the things that are hurting. You want to keep doing the things that are working and maybe try similar strategies. And then you want to back away from the things that aren't having an effect. So you had done a whole bunch of diets and it was pretty damn clear that it wasn't doing anything, right? It didn't really matter. So you'll hear a lot on people who are suffering from hives. They have to be low histamine. Well, you did it for a while. You did it strictly, completely, right? For a week, nothing changed. And then you even went off and on for a period of 3 months with less intense compliance, but it didn't do anything. So you have to stop that. Just because it sounds like a good idea doesn't mean it's always going to help. The same thing for histamine and mast cell. You'll read a lot about functional medicine doctors emphasizing how important mast cell can be, and it really can be. But the truth of the matter is it didn't work for you. And so it would be a waste of time to keep trying to put you on quercetin and vitamin C and other supplements. You see the first green there. So I color green things that have worked or shown benefit. Orange is things that haven't done anything. And then I put red when something hurts a patient. So I know not to do that again. And so you just had a lot of hitting your head against the wall, right? Trying something, it didn't work. Hydroxyzine didn't work. Montelukast, it's a great drug. Didn't work for you. I think you had tried Xolair. Yeah, Xolair.
Yeah.
So Xolair is a great drug and it works for some patients. It did not help you. And so we want to make sure we go away from those things. Air purifier definitely helps. So we'll talk about environmental triggers for CIU and good old-fashioned prednisone. What are the things that helped you the most of the treatments that you and I have done together?
Yeah, I think prednisone has always been the one thing that has safely worked for me.
Yep.
I think I was on and off for quite a bit of time, but there was a lot of fear around it because the doctors were saying, well, you can't be on it too long. And so I think the first area of relief was like when I came to you and you said, listen, we can try a low prednisone. You can stay on a little bit longer. You don't have to feel like your world is ending. We'll monitor this, right? And that gave me enough confidence to get off the mental state of depression a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I could now do what I needed to do and work in life and be happy for at least a longer period of time than 3 days. So
you were using prednisone kind of very sparingly when things were at its worst. You'd say, okay, I'll do this for 2 days because I have a work meeting or event and I need to get things calmed down. And so one of the first shifts we did was say, look, do we want to be on prednisone for the rest of our life? No. But at the doses that are going to work for you, Joe, it's worth the small bit of side effect. And so you did great with doses of 10 or 15 milligrams. And so I think we hung there for maybe 2 months or so.
Yeah.
And that worked for you, correct?
It worked for me. And then I felt confident enough to even start reducing this down to 5 and now to none, right? Which is
Yeah. Yeah.
fantastic because,
Yeah.
I don't want to be on prednisone. I don't want to really be on any medication. So, but you're absolutely correct. And I think just just to be able to sleep, we don't talk about that too often, but the fact that I'm not sleeping, we're talking about just every night trying to take baths, oatmeal baths, right? To try and ease the tension and just getting a little bit of sleep. I mean, mentally that really crushes you. You can't focus on life after that. And this was every day. So, I mean, I think that's kind of where, all right, we got the prednisone, but we're going to figure out a long-term cure here, right? We'll give you something to get you through your days and work and operational. We want Joe back. So you gave me that option. And then I think when we found out what the cause was, really starting to kind of cure the actual problem to it.
You saw me for the first time October 11th and 23. And after a month later, you called me, and I think you were out of town, but you had just been doing 15 milligrams a day. And you said, I'm a whole new person. And I said, all right, now we've gotten a little ground. We've made up a little bit of ground. Now we can start really getting to work. We had your initial tests back. Mm-hmm. And two things really stood out. Your urinary thallium. Thallium is a heavy metal. It's a radioactive element. And I'm seeing more and more thallium poisoning happen. And that was high. And that was really big on my list because it can cause ulcers, neuropathy, and alopecia, right? And so the thallium here was really important and really stuck out. And that was kind of suspect number one. Number two was thinking about mold, because I see mold being the prime driver in my patients of CIU, of chronic hives. And so we did a mold test, and that was positive. There's no way to get a test and say, okay, I have 2 positive results. Which one is it? It's guesswork, right? And so what I did was we're going to just treat both. We're going to treat the toxic pieces here and have Joe get better. So we did the normal thing that I always do, is you get probiotics first, right? The more probiotics, the better in my world. And we slowly started treating those toxic results. And share with anyone who's got a hive right now.
I mean, I had been testing for some of this stuff already and not getting really anything in return. Seemed like the symptoms were aligned to like mold and things of that nature. And, I was hiring companies and things like that and just not getting results. And we did some more thorough tests, right? We did a couple different tests that we really tested for, and then found out, all right, there is some air quality issues within the home. And once we kind of removed that, started seeing some improvements all of a sudden. And maybe even for the rest of my household, for 3 kids too, they were a little bit more sick. There's things like that we started to notice. So there was probably a relation there. And so I think that really helped. And it was going from thinking we did everything to realizing that we have a lot more we need to do to really figure this thing out. I mean, that's a big change for someone like me, where you're thinking we've tried it all, but everybody said, sorry, we can't figure it out. I mean, to a point where doctors are saying, we don't know, good luck. You feel very lonely. So when we started those additional tests, we started seeing some things. It gave me a little bit of hope back. There is something related to this, and symptoms started to subside after that, of course.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, you had a positive mold test and some suspicious areas in the house, but you didn't need to knock down walls. You didn't need to renovate your whole second floor. You got air purifiers, you cleaned up some spots, and that was enough to bring the environmental load down. These are cost-effective, easy things that don't require us to demolish the house. You got better. So it was enough, right? I think probably if we did another ERMI or immunolytics test, a couple little things would pop up, but who the hell cares? Because you're off prednisone and you are now hive-free for how long?
So, man, it's been a while. I mean, it's been at least 3 or 4 months, I think now, because but the key to me was, well, I knew I was on prednisone. I never really got hives. So I was like, all right, I'm on prednisone still. So I don't know. But now being 3-4 weeks without any prednisone, normally it's a day after I'm off the prednisone and here it comes
back.
I'm back. So it's been several months now, and it's super exciting. It's allowing me to really start to focus and get back to who I was before.
You get back to your life, right? You get back to the things that you want to do instead of just worrying about your health. Speaking of which, I fussed at you about limbic training for quite a while, didn't I?
You did.
Do you want to share any thoughts or experience with doing limbic retraining?
So that's, what's it called? The
UPTA program.
Yeah, Gupta. So I did do Gupta for a little bit. I'll be honest with you. I didn't extend it as far as I wanted to. I think part of it was I was starting to get better. But one thing that I really liked about the concept of it, you have to understand, and people who are in this experience, that's why I keep talking about the mental and the physical state. They're kind of in
Yeah.
a line.
Yeah. That's why I wanted
Right.
you to.
So like, so what I, and just the group, the program, but even other things, just mindset wise, is if you start really thinking that there is no cure, there is no hope, or I got a little itch here, that's going to turn into a massive hive.
Yep.
I've had
Yep.
people
Yep.
comment before on these chats. They said, I miss just having an itch and it just being an itch, right? When you have an itch, you think it's the world's ending because your whole body's going to be filled with hives. I started kind of training my brain to be like, okay, it's just an itch. I'm getting better. So that's what I think the Gupta program was starting to train on. And I think that's really important. I think it's critical to really have that confidence and make sure you're in a mental state that really is beneficial to you and your health.
To start getting better, you have to convince yourself you're better, and you have to kind of really see that things have gone better for a while before those thoughts can go away. But when you're still struggling in the beginning stages, you really need to be aware of those thoughts and how harmful they can be for your healing. You really have to be vigilant. And that's why I harp about limbic retraining or DNRS or primal trust for a lot of patients with chronic illnesses, but especially CIU because of how 24/7 it is.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about thallium. All right.
That's a word that gets popped up around the house a lot.
I got a word you probably thought you would never have to think about.
Yeah.
I see more and more patients with thallium exposure, and I'm seeing thallium particularly in urine tests, heavy metal urine tests. And thallium is a byproduct of factories, coal burning power plants. It's a naturally occurring element in the Earth's crust. So mining operations that are kind of bringing things to the surface can do it. But I ask patients and they're saying, well, I don't live anywhere near a coal burning power plant, or I don't have factories near me. So I think you may not live near a coal burning power plant or a factory, but if the farm that raises your beef is, you're probably getting dosed through livestock and through crops. I had one patient who was eating 2 or 3 cups of spinach and kale, organic spinach and kale, a day in a smoothie, trying to get healthy, and thallium levels went up. It turns out thallium can bioaccumulate in some of those green vegetables.
Yeah.
And we had to stop the healthy organic green smoothie for her, and her hair grew back, which was wonderful. But I'm seeing more and more people who are having problems with thallium, and I think it's a direct result of our polluted environment. And so I wanted to throw that out there for people to just be aware of that this is a problem.
Yeah, and I'll say no one tested for that. Right, that was something that was, I mean, how many blood tests I had, no one tested for that. And so it was really just kind of the same blood test over and over again, not really looking at the heavy metals and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was another extension of, all right, let's really figure out what the source of the problem is.
When I take a case on, one of the first things I want to do is not just reflexively order labs. So people call me and they say, hey, well, are you going to order labs before seeing me? And no, because I need to hear what's been done. Why am I going to do it again?
Right.
You know, people have this idea that if you do a blood count and a metabolic panel and a lipid profile, you're going to figure out why someone's sick. And it's silly, but it was very obvious to see, oh, well, CIU is often caused by toxins. What toxins have we not looked for? We haven't looked for heavy metals. There's an $89 urine test from Doctor's Data. Go pee in a cup, Joe. It's not a hard thing to do. Right?
And for someone who was going through what I'm going through, anyone would do that. I just don't think there's enough education awareness for people to even think that way, right? So it's mind-boggling to think that you keep going in, you keep spending money, you keep trying to get results, and you're only getting the same thing over and over again and not really understanding what the source of the problem is. It's almost just a Band-Aid or trying to provide a Band-Aid for you when we really need to figure out the problem, especially with something like this. So we figured it out pretty quickly. I don't think it was only a couple months in before we figured out we had the thallium issue. So it wasn't 18 months of just 25 doctors and I don't know how many tests, but 3 months of kind of what we decided to do here. And we figured out kind of, I think, what the source of the issue was.
Yeah. I mean, we had your results back within a month, and then it was just a matter of getting your body ready to take the treatment. So even if you have the thallium level there, it's not the case that we necessarily want to just aggressively throw everything at thallium or mold toxins, right? Because your body, it's kind of a mess, right? You hadn't been sleeping, like your gut was not good. You were depressed. Like eating and stress and meals and movement and family and all that stuff, I think needed some time and attention before we could get you on the binders. And so you now are on about one capsule of a variety of binders to bring toxins slowly out. This is what I do for a lot of different toxic treatments. And even the binders, I think initially, I think you did poorly with the clay, right? The clay was high of a dose in the one capsule, and we had to kind of go slow. Are you back on it now? I can't remember.
Yeah, no, I've been on that without issue. So I think initially when I first took it, maybe my body reacted poorly, but after just a couple of weeks, I've been on it every day.
And remember, if your body's immune system is inappropriately reacting to stimuli, that's kind of the hallmark of CIU. Some mold toxins, some pollen, maybe there's some radon or bacterial growth, but your immune system is characterizing these things as deadly threats and just exploding mast cells into histamine all over, right? And so new things sometimes upsets the immune system when the immune system has been geared to chronically overact for years and years and years. So we had to go low and slow, but then the lower we've gotten the toxic elements, I think the better you felt. And then once the thallium cleared, I can figure out when that was. So we got it back October 31st, and your thallium had cleared, I think, early part of January or February of this year. So 3 to 4 months, we got it out. And that was roughly the time period where you were able to get off the prednisone. And so I think your case was as simple as getting the fundamentals right, supporting the gut, detoxifying, and not being afraid of the prescription medicine. And I think that was as simple as that.
Yeah.
You think I'm missing something? What did I forget?
No, I don't think you are. I think you're correct. I think it was two-part. It was number one, building confidence in Joe to say, hey, we're going to get you by the next couple weeks, months, years, whatever it takes, so you can operate and do what you do with your family and your work and your school. So you're not stressed all the time. And it'll be a temporary thing for us to make sure you have your life. But in the meantime, I'm working on curing the big problem. And I think for me, which was fascinating, was how quickly we identified it, diagnosed it, and how quickly we were able to fix it. You know, I'm thinking this could take still a few years for some folks, but I was very fortunate that it didn't. So now we're in a much better place where I don't have to have those prescription drugs, and now I can move forward and work on other things. Other problems we're going to fix, right? Always other issues.
There's going to be some point in your life where you get hives again. I think your immune system is now sensitized and built that way. I hope it's never, but we can always go back to what worked to get you back here, right? So maybe 2 years from now, we're not using binders, you're slacking off on the diet, right? And you're stressed out of your mind from work, and you hadn't been on prednisone for 2 years. Let's say you start getting a couple hives again. We go back to what worked. We don't be afraid of using the prednisone. We calm everything down and get you better. And that way, the hives are going to be kind of a red flag that you are pushing your body farther than it wants to go. And it's going to let you know. And then you just say, okay, sorry, body. I'll be better. It's okay. Just give it up.
And I will say, like, when I'm sick, hives will come back. The immune system probably down.
That did happen. Yeah.
It happens when you get
right after Christmas. You were traveling and you got a nasty virus, and everything went back up. And,
we recognize, when I'm sick, that will happen. But I think the one thing now, if it does come back, I don't have to be so worried. There is a way that we can get rid of this thing pretty quickly and get me fixed again. It's just going to happen sporadically every once in a while. It's just 20. But I'm okay now with that. What did happen, I was like, my life.
I'm back. It's, next 6 months are terrible, and we don't need to do that. We can just say,
you don't need to do that anymore. So that is the biggest benefit out of all this, I think, for sure.
So we get the CIU in remission, suppressed, better. We've got the toxic load down. We're going to keep you on binders for a while, and your whole health has taken a step up, right? So you're back, martial arts, you're back, and now we're at a point where we can say, all right, well, how do we get Joe even better, right? And so last visit, which I think was a week ago, I said, all right, buddy, it's time we got to circle back to the cholesterol and blood sugar. And I low carbed you, and I had you fast. How did it go?
It was kind of funny because my wife, who is a health nut as well, was like, I'm going to do this with you. So we did it. And again, it was only 24 hours, but it was kind of funny because we were both so hangry the whole time. And even my oldest son at some point was like, hey, why do you guys keep yelling at each other all day today? And we're just really hungry. So
Like it's Dr. Joe's fault, okay?
yeah, just blame the other Joe. We got through it, and now we're kind of excited about it, right? There's a lot of obviously health benefits that you can talk to of doing that, but just the discipline in itself, I think, was really strong and really good. So, I mean, just we're when we have a plan, we follow it, and I think that's the key. If you kind of go off the plan course, things can happen. But listen, you give us a plan, we know it works. We've tried this already, so we're going to do it, even though we're going to be angry, yelling at each other on the weekends. But it's worthwhile, I think.
Green tea, drink unlimited green tea. That really cuts the appetite. Black coffee if you like it. And then the other thing with a fast is a little bit of calories here and there doesn't disrupt it. It's not that big a deal. So if you just need like, I don't know, a couple ounces of cheese, just fat.
Once you open that door, it's going to be a lot of cheese. I can't stop myself. You know how I am. I just go all in or nothing.
I've eaten a whole block of cheese. A few hundred calories, I think is completely accessible, particularly when you're training your body to get back used to it. Because a lot of us have been eating 3 meals a day forever, just for decades. And our body has to remember, oh, okay, I'm not having calories right now. It's okay. Right? And it takes a little bit of time. And so don't be afraid if you need to break your fast in 18 hours or 20 hours and just keep going. If you schedule it every Monday or whatever, and you just keep coming back to it, within a few months, 24 hours is easy. And you're all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I didn't eat all day. And I guess I'll just go 32. So keep on it, as long as you're not going to stab your wife or she's going to choke you in your sleep.
We'll see. We only got through 1 week so far. So long way to go.
Even a little protein powder is okay. What do you want someone with CIU to know? What do you wish someone had told you a couple years ago? Or
I think the one thing that I would love to hear, part of all these group chats and all these little small communities, that there is some hope, right? I think these stories are horrible. There's people that have a lot worse than even I do. And some of them are in children, which is the saddest thing you'll ever see, right? And so I think, especially as a child or a parent of a child, to see all these different comments and to see like nothing seems to be working for the heavy majority of these people, or if it does work, it's temporary. I think I want that to be turned. There is a way, right? Both sides have to commit to one another to say, let's get through this. And if we could do that and then kind of eliminate the mental state of hopelessness and start really focusing that there is a way around this. Everyone's different. Not everyone's going to have the same diagnosis. You have to explore this, right? So again, Dr. It's coming back to the right doctor, right? And that's really what it comes down to. You have to have the right doctor that's going to be willing to do this for you and look at every angle. Because if you don't, you can quickly get depressed. And I think that's really what I want to get out. It's why I want to do this. It's why I want to put that out there to the world and these communities so they can start tapping into those resources, right?
Because you've been through a lot of suffering and you've had a lot of hurt. And so it's one of my favorite things in the world when you get to take that and you kind of like make it happiness, make it a little bit better for someone else, make that horribleness, put it to use. We are going to learn a lot more about CIU. When doctors are saying that, it's usually environment. These are environmental illnesses. So mold and heavy metals, number one. Number two, I think it's less likely that it's an infectious problem. I really am on the environmental side on this. I think there are cases that can be caused by infections. And the fix to this is not just slamming detoxification. It's rebuilding the body. And I think having a full-bodied approach. Yes, you're fixing the gut. Yes, you're making sure diet's appropriate. Yes, you're making sure stress and sleep are all good. You're not missing any of those pieces. You're finding out what that patient needs. And then moving to gentle detoxification, making sure you remove the sources of the upside if there's mold in the environment. So those are the things I would like people to start thinking in that way, people and doctors too. With that, why don't we call it a day? We'll call this meeting of Joe's. Any last words, Joe?
No, I guess the only last words I would say is it's always good practice, not even if you have this condition, but just to always monitor your general health. That's something we're working on now and being proactive. Yeah. That's one thing I've learned throughout this process. It's not just do a yearly, go ahead and see a doctor and check your lungs and heart. Start thinking about the things you're eating and drinking. That's something that I've learned from this experience and I'm going to take more seriously. And 38, so I'm ahead of this a little bit. But I stay healthy for a long time for me and my kids, my family, and everybody and my friends.
Thank you so much, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.